Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it. Thanks. By the way, I also have a Naruto fanfiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Lost One by Hyperguy Oda-sama recently revealed that Luffy's devil fruit was not what we thought. So here's a question. What if Luffy not only had the power of a god, but the guidance of one as well? Luffy's harem as his entire crew. Basically, Luffy is going to be really overpowered from the start, and he will be able to create devil fruits. I don't own anything, adios.
Chapter 25. Sailed to the Winter Island. A greedy king pirate and his princess Cinderella. The mood on the Straw Hats ships was at an all-time low. Luffy, for once, had no time for fun or games. All he could do was sit on the Mary's figurehead and watch the horizon for any sign of this drum island. Nothing mattered more than getting Reiju the help she needed. According to Vivi, this island was the best option, not only being about a day away from when they started, but for a well-earned reputation as a haven for medical science where all of the most acclaimed doctors in the world trained or did their research at one point. The only other concern was that this was taking valuable time away from returning Vivi to Alabasta, where a civil war was now more likely than ever. You all have risked your lives over and over again to help me return home. The least I can do is make sure you all get there as well. Remembering that brought a brief smile to Luffy's face. He didn't know a thing about politics, but any country with a leader that wise and generous was in good hands in his eyes. Unfortunately, he could not help but remember Reiju's condition. The chef was now lying in his bed, jumping between shivering bouts and intense fever. Kaya was practically hovering over her, doing whatever she could to keep her temperature down and to monitor her condition. Her skin was still a deep purple and anything she drank other than water was promptly thrown up. The rest of the crew were in the same boat as their captain, idly going about their business. There was no room for jokes or messing around when one of their own was down for the count. The only change came as a blanket of gray clouds covered the sky and the temperature dropped dramatically, forcing many of the pirates to dig out their coats and jackets to cover up. Strange as it may have been, it was a good sign. Drum Island was a winter island, constantly blanketed by snow and frigid winds. The cold snap meant they were in throwing distance now, and Luffy had them going full speed ahead towards the doctor they needed. Up in the crow's nest, Mikita was acting as the lookout. Being in the kitchen just didn't feel right without their head chef. Plus, she could just float down to the deck as long as a strong wind didn't blow through. It was there that she looked ahead through a telescope, then checked again several times. Captain? There's a man in clown getup standing on the ocean. What are your orders, I guess? Huh? That actually snapped Luffy to attention, looking through the spyglass himself and seeing that Mikita was completely right. Somehow, there was a man with his own 2 feet planted on the surface of the water. And as if to top that, his outfit made even Luffy raise an eyebrow. A checkered light blue and green jester's outfit with a thick white shawl over his shoulders and blue shoes bound with metal buckles. He also wore a large quiver of arrows and a bow over his back. Nami, how is he doing that? Doing what? The navigator took a look for herself and promptly felt her jaw almost hit the deck. What the? More and more of the Straw Hats came up to see the commotion, as the man on the ocean came closer. Before they could speak to him, the ocean beneath the jester began to froth and rise, revealing how he was standing. A submarine? Several of them yelled. Indeed, the jester was now on top of a giant submersible ship, several times the size of the Mary with steel plating on its massive hull and a gigantic white hippo for a figurehead. Whoa, an underwater pirate ship, Luffy exclaimed. I didn't know they made those. You and me both, Captain, Alvida sighed. The better question is, what do they want? They got their answer as the gargantuan submarine ship pulled alongside the Mary and a very big someone leapt onto the caravel. Immediately, they all noticed this man was fat, giving the old Alvida a run for her money in size. Stark purple hair stuck out underneath the giant white coat slung over his shoulder, his mouth almost looking gilded thanks to the steel plates welded on both his upper and lower jaw, with almost all of his expansive torso being covered by more metal. Which one of you is in charge here? He barked, the petulant demand in his tone making the Straw Hats even more tense. I am. Luffy stepped forward. Whatever you want, make it fast. We need to be somewhere as fast as possible. TCH, cocky brat. I need an eternal pose to Drum Island. Hand it over, right now. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have one. Makino tried to be polite. Actually, we're on our way there now. I don't suppose we could offer something else? The bulbous man growled before pulling out a cutlass, the Straw Hats readying their weapons until they saw the man eat the blade. What? Desire? Kuina and Nami cried in shock, but the metal-plated man just chomped down on the sword like it was a crunchy snack. Even Luffy felt a twinge of disgust. At least he stuck to eating food. No eternal pose, huh? Very well then, I'll be taking all the money and food you have aboard? Oh, hell no, Clarice growled. You are not robbing us, especially not today. Get off our ship before I kick your fat ass. What did you just call me? Don't you know who I am? Yeah, an asshole, Desire joined in, now fuck off or you're gonna be our new Anchow. Grr, the man then somehow opened his jaw to a ridiculous length, enough to easily cover a rowboat, before sinking his distended teeth into the Mary's railing. The Straw Hats all yelled in shock as he bit into the wood like it was a strip of bacon before noisily chewing the whole lot and swallowing it. He was about to repeat the process, but something grabbed a hold of his throat. What the? Unhand me. You! A sheer wave of rage made the fat bastard shut up immediately. He looked down to see Luffy holding up with one hand, his stare promising death if he does that again. I don't care who you are. My friend is sick and I'm going to Drum Island to get her the help she needs. Now get off my ship and leave before I make you suffer. Before anyone could answer, the sound of a bowstring being pulled grabbed everyone's attention. Vivi shouted in shock as the jester from before fired an arrow right at Luffy's skull, right before it was sliced in half. Nice try, Kuina sighed, sheathing the Wado Ichimonji, you're gonna have to be faster than that. Chess, I told you to start nailing them while Wapol was talking, the Afro man yelled. I thought he might want some of the girls as concubines, the jester argued only to feel a wave of pure killing intent that made him turn white. The entire Straw Hat crew, plus Vivi, were all glaring at him. Captain, Nami said, eerily quiet, I know Reiju's safety comes first, but would you terribly mind if we deal with these jokers first? Not at all. They wanted all our stuff, take all of theirs, shouldn't take too long. ATTAAAAAACK. Desire yelled as she barreled onto the deck of the massive enemy ship. The rest of the crew right behind her. Chess and his cohort readied themselves for a fight as dozens of men in identical green uniforms toting rifles charged to meet the Straw Hats in battle. Chess soon found himself hurriedly trying to fire on the run as several of the crew, including Ban, Custard and Sally, took personal offense to his whole concubine quip. Guards tried to assist him only to get trampled by Clarice or zapped by Nami. His cohort, Kuromarimo, was not having much luck. He was a talented boxer whose special hair-covered gloves could stick to anyone he punched to distract and immobilize them. Unfortunately, he had to deal with Alvida whose smooth fruit power meant his hairballs slid right off her and left him wide open to getting attacked by Carmen and Najiko. The latter also turning the planks of their ship into a mass of brambles and thorns to stop any further reinforcements. And back on the Mary, Luffy threw Wapol onto the deck so he could properly kick his ass. Get up, fat ass, I'm going to make this quick. You dare, you impudent little brat, I'll make you sorry. Wapol then stretched his mouth open inhumanly wide to reveal an entire cannon sticking out of his gullet, prepared to face the power of the munch fruit. The cannon fired with a bang, but Luffy simply used paper arts to duck out of the way. As Wapol gaped, the straw-hatted pirate simply pulled back his fist with a single haki-infused punch right to the glutton's gut. What did you do to the king? The king, Mikita muttered, geez, I knew this guy was pompous but good grief. Everyone turned to see Wapol, half of his armor plates now strewn across the deck and bent out of shape. The man was now strewn across the Mary's deck, bile leaking out of his mouth and clearly unconscious. Luffy hauled him up with one hand before jumping onto the massive submersible, the guards all terrified into submission. Now, take this asshole and let us go. Hold it right there, a voice screeched, you think you can just attack Wapol, asshole? Everyone turned to see a woman strut out from the inside the ship, making everyone stop and turn. Dressed in what could only be described as a parka ball gown hybrid, the fuzzy yet slender purple cloak highlighted her hourglass figure. As if that wasn't enough, high 6-inch heels clacked on the deck, the same bubblegum pink as her long hair. Wrapped around her neck was a giant feather boa and a slim black domino mask sat on her face, only covering the area around her eyes. Huh? Miss Cinderella, what are you doing? Chess begged. You need to stay in your cabin, or else these nasty pirates could hurt you. Please, Miss Cinderella, get somewhere safe. Kuromarimo agreed. The king would be devastated if something happened to his fiancée. Fiancé? The girls of the Straw Hats screamed, to that creep? Yeah, what of it? Cinderella snapped. Now, which one of you clods did that to Wapol? I did, Luffy said without a hint of shame, what about it? The woman suddenly took a deep breath in, before batting her eyelashes while perching her chin on her hands to look as cutesy as possible. Oh, Wapol, wakey. Hamina. The king responded immediately, right back to his senses. Did these barbarians hurt you, my love? Oh, no, but I can't stand to see you like this. My love, you promised you'd get us back to Drum Island, remember? Right. Wapol then proceeded to grab Luffy's head by the teeth. Now let go or I'm gonna bite your head off, he muttered. Ah, your breath stinks. Luffy, stop messing around, Nami and Mikita yelled. Quick, someone do something, Vivi cried. Let me handle this. Everyone turned in shock to see Reiju stumble out of the Mary's hold, even as Kaya demanded she get back to bed. The Straw Hats all paled seeing her face matted with sweat just from walking, even in the frigid air. She had to slowly hobble onto the railing, then carefully leap onto the other ship even though she nearly lurched. Huh? Who are you? Wapol mumbled, Luffy's skull still within his jaws. I'm the chef of this crew, tell me, Kaya said, you ate a sword. That's right. What of it? I got something better. Reiju's cheeks suddenly swelled up as if she were about to vomit, only for a massive wave of pink liquid to burst from her lips. Wapol released Luffy as he was doused, the liquid actually melting his coat and remaining armor. He then screamed in pain as some of the acid managed to get in his eyes and mouth, him backing away in shock until he hit his ship's rail. Luffy took the opportunity, swinging his fist back. Gum gum pistol. Wapol screamed even louder as he was sent flying into the ocean, the rest of his pirate crew, entourage yelling in terror. They completely ignored that Nami and Kurina were already running outside with sacks of loot over their shoulder. Holy shit, Cinderella yelled, how the fuck did you do that? I'm a rubber man, now, you gonna cause more trouble for us? Cinderella then doubled over on the deck laughing, holy shit, that Wap priceless, serves the bitchy tub of lard after all this time. Ah ha 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 ha. Miss Cinderella? The rest of the Tin Tyrant pirates yelled. What the Straw Hats until Reiju, looking a lot less purple, collapsed on the ship deck. Hey, there were a bunch of doctors down there, Kurina said. Get one of them to look after Reiju. Wait, is it true Wapol's been defeated? A literal crowd of men all wearing full green scrubs and pink rubber gloves were now assembled on deck. Please, take us with you. You traitors, Kuromarimo snarled. The king will need your services once we rescue him. Screw that, you walking lint brush, Cinderella yelled. I'm ditching this mad ship too, you all can go fuck yourselves. Wah, you all, get on the ship, Luffy ordered. I don't care who the guys in green are, just make sure Reiju is okay. Yes sir. They all cheered before jumping onto the Mary, Cinderella even getting piggybacked by Luffy as she flipped all of Wapol's crew a double middle finger before the Mary and Melody were hurriedly steering away. And just to really ruin their day, the Straw Hats launched a volley of cannonballs from both of their ships. The Blicking may have had armor for most of the hull, but several shots landed on the cabins above and forced them to send rowboats out to rescue Wapol from drowning. Once the enemy crew was out of sight, the assembled doctors brought Reiju back to Luffy's cabin. While her skin lost the bright purple hue, she was still in horrible shape. They furiously examined her, had Kaya assemble a full inventory of the ship's medicine, and swore that they would repay their rescuer by ensuring to keep the chef as stable as possible. Okay, what the hell is up with those guys? Nijiko asked. I thought they all worked for Wapol. Better question, why'd they keep calling him king? Clarice asked. That wasn't just them being fancy, they actually were treating the guy like he was royalty. Vivi then raised her hand. I can't believe I didn't recognize immediately, but I know for a fact he is royalty. He's King Wapol of Drum Island. Wait, what? Then what the hell is he doing running a pirate ship? Nami scratched her head, and more importantly, why did we let his fiancée on board? Because I wouldn't piss on the fuckhead if he was on fire, the pink-haired woman said back, sipping her tea like this was an ordinary day. I've been dying to knock that hippo in a coat off his high horse for months now. Okay, what is that guy's problem? Kuina asked. He's a king running around playing pirate, with a fiancée who hates his guts, and a private platoon of doctors just for him, and apparently can't find the island he's in charge of? Welcome to the travesty that's been my life for the past year. Sit your asses down and I'll explain it, and only once. Luffy, as curious as anyone else, sat at the head of the Mary's dining room table and listened along with his crew as Cinderella unraveled everything. First and foremost, yes, the munching madman that wanted to eat their ship was the King Wapol of Drum. As for why he was acting as a pirate captain? 6 months ago, everything was normal until they showed up. Pirates, the strongest I've ever seen. The military got utterly demolished by them. Wapol, being the coward that he is, fled immediately with his personal guard and the 20 MDs, and me in his arms. Even as I begged him to save my family. Oh my god, that's awful, Makino said in sympathy. What kind of crew could do such a thing? I remember seeing them from the ship, as we sailed away. Some giant guy with huge muscles, a lanky freak in a top hat. A guy with a monocle and the biggest, most overcompensating gun I've ever seen. Some weird old coot on a horse that looked half dead. And then there was the captain, tall, fat, a black beard on his face. I swore I heard him laughing as he burned my family's village to the ground. T of them? Alvida asked, to topple a military force on the Grand Line. Especially a world government nation like Drum. You'd need a small army of your own. Nope. That was it. Our whole kingdom, taken down by 5 people. The very thought made even Makita and Custard shudder. A crew even smaller than theirs crushing an entire nation in one day? These were some heavy hitters in the making. Even more shocking was that none of the ladies who'd been in the Grand Line before the rest had heard a word about Drum Island being invaded. Vivi was shocked by that news, but not at all by Wapol's decision to leave his people to suffer. She had first met him at a reverie for all of the world government leaders when she was just a child, and he proved to be just as crass, selfish and entitled as he was here. He honestly tried to have Vivi, at the time about 6 years old, arrested for assault, for the crime of bumping into him by accident. Okay, I officially have no regrets about robbing the bastard. Desire nodded. What was the haul, by the way? About 10 million bears in cash, and close to 40 million in gold bars and gems. You forgot this. Cinderella reached underneath her boa to reveal an extravagant diamond necklace, easily multiple carats worth, and then pulled off an equally splendid ring off of her right hand. Pawn that and you'll get another million, easy. Welcome to the crew, Cinderella. Nami and Karina cheered. Oh brother, Moody sighed, don't make me have to use my powers on them, again. That all said, the next order of business was the doctors and why they were so eager to leave. Much to the crew's horror, Cinderella explained how Wapol got the brilliant idea to make sure there would be no rebellion against his tyranny. He declared a law saying that all doctors would only work for him or be executed. The 20 MDs were the ones he enlisted to be his personal medical team, and any who needed their help would have to appease the king. I have to admit, he's not stupid. Sally rolled her shoulders in her chair. One means of preventing an insurrection is being indispensable in some form. But what about the people of Drum? Vivi yelled, he's really going to let the rest of his people die of disease? His island was the world's foremost leader in medical science. Yeah, and I used to give a shit when I got out of bed in the morning. Cinderella sighed. Man, you think he's insufferable now? Try sharing a bed with him. Hearing all of that, Honey Queen asked the obvious question. If you hate him so much, why did you ever agree to marry him? That made the pink cat put down her tea before sighing. Only Wapol has access to the 20 MDs, unless you beg him for it. My parents and grandparents all needed treatment. To him, for 6 people to tend him meant a huge price so. Oh my god, Ban shuddered, your betrothal was just a bargaining chip. And of course, he said he would get the wedding ceremony together since a king can't just elope, but then that black-bearded fucker attacked and he dragged me away from him. But with my family gone, I had no reason to stay. I was just gonna poison him or something if he made it back. Well, you never had to worry about him again, Luffy swore. That bastard isn't gonna bother us anymore. And if he does, I'm gonna kick his ass even harder. Ha ha ha, amen to that. One of the 20 MDs then knocked on the door to the galley with an update on Reiju's report. While expelling all the poison from her body did her a world of good, she was still in deep trouble. The doctors have her relatively stable, but the chef was still suffering from potential liver and kidney failure. They also have no idea what the actual poison was to create an antidote, even having poured through every textbook they had. Thankfully, there was one doctor still left on Drum Island who could treat Reiju, and she was the best there could be. They just needed to reach the island first. Cinderella did prove useful as she helped keep the ships on track, even if she was cursing like a sailor under her breath all the while. By noon, their destination was in sight. A snow-covered island with several massive columns of rock towering over the rest of the landscape. There was only one proper inlet for their ships to enter through, and it was in spitting distance of a village. With all of the Straw Hats now properly dressed in winter coats, Luffy waited on deck with Cinderella and some of the 20 MDs to try and smooth things over with the locals. After all, they had every reason to be antsy around pirates given what happened less than a year ago. And sure enough, when the Going Merry and Mini Melody dropped anchor, the makeshift harbor was surrounded by dozens of scowling people in parkas holding pitchforks and rifles. At the front of the pack was one especially burly man in a bright green coat with a gigantic shovel across his back. Hold it, he shouted to everyone else. Cinderella, what are you doing on a pirate ship with some of Wapol's doctors? Because these guys kicked Wapol's ass and saved me from that tub of lard. Now could we please save the Q&A? We have a woman who desperately needs medical help. It's true, the masked doctor added. She's suffering from some toxin we have no experience with. Dr. Kureha is her only option at this point. The giant man in green looked around and saw how wary everyone else. That all changed when Luffy got down on his knees and placed his forehead on the deck, shocking everyone. Cinderella told me about the pirate attack you all went through. I can understand why you all have no reason to trust me. As soon as my crewmate is treated, my crew will leave. We will not steal or damage anything, because my friend's life is on the line. Nothing matters more to me than getting her the care she needs. The sight of a pirate on his knees begging for help took the people of Drum by surprise. Plus, it was no secret that Cinderella couldn't stand Wapol and only married to get access to the MDs. And the only reason the tyrant would give up his doctors would be someone ripping them away from him. Very well, the man in green nodded. My name is Dalton, and you can bring your crewmate to my house for now. Follow me closely. Luffy stood up, signaling his crew that they were welcome. The villagers were quite shocked to see that there are only women on board besides the captain and the 20 MDs, several of which were carrying Reiju on a stretcher while the rest trudged through the snow to reach Bighorn where Dalton resided. The moment Reiju was laid down on the man's massive bed, the man was given a full debriefing of her condition. The poison she was infected with was completely unknown to any of them. So it sounds like Dr. Kureha is her only option. No wonder you all had to come here. Where am I? Reiju croaked. Several of her crewmates surrounded her bed, noticing how pallid her skin was and how lifeless her voice sounded. Don't worry, we're going to get you all better, Kaya assured. You're going to see the best doctor they have. The chef smiled at that before coughing. Luffy, in case the worst happens, I need to be honest with you. Shish, don't worry about that now, Carmen insisted. We can handle any other issues afterward. Well, I hope you're good at mountain climbing. Cinderella rolled her shoulders, even if she found the Straw Hats' camaraderie touching. That old doctor lives in Wapol's old castle up on top of the Drum Rockies, and the only cable car has its winch stored in the castle. Fine, Luffy said without an ounce of hesitation. I'll get her there. Where's the mountain? Wait, what? That's how we roll, Kuina said plainly. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. There's also no guarantee she'll be there, Dalton warned. I have no idea how, but she can sense when someone on the island is sick. She travels in a sleigh pulled by a reindeer of hers down the mountain and then back up once they're treated. She could be at any one of the 3 villages. Then we SP immediately. Luffy, you make sure Reiju gets to the castle. The rest of us will either stay here or go to one of the other towns and wait for her there. You all have transponder snails we can use, right? You do seem to have the numbers for it. Very well, but are you sure he can climb that mountain while carrying your friend? There are frequent blizzards around the mountain's peak and it's essentially a column of rock. If it means Reiju will get better, I'll do anything. Write down the numbers of the snails and I'll get going. With all of the Straw Hats preoccupied with their plan, no one was near the coast to see a familiar, now very battered ship run aground on the white shores of Drum. Ah, finally, Wapol crowed, I have returned to my kingdom. Indeed, King Wapol, but it appears we still have a problem, Kuromarimo reported. Our lookout spotted the Straw Hats ships anchored at the inlet just outside Bighorn. What? Those louts, stealing my fiancé and doctors weren't enough. They want to take my throne. Somebody, fetch the royal transponder snail. Only a minute later, a gem-encrusted mollusk was brought out. The king dialed the world government's most restricted channel, one whose number is passed down from leader to leader of allied nations. You have reached the Marie Joy Private Crisis Hotline, a professional voice said from the other side. What is the emergency on Drum Island? It's the Straw Hat Pirates. They assaulted me right as I was returning from a long voyage. They've taken my fiancée Cinderella and my personal physicians hostage and now are running amok in my kingdom. Understood, sir. Monkey D. Luffy is infamous for coercing women into his ranks. Unfortunately, the Marines have issued a strict order that no one under the rank of captain is to directly confront chaos. The nearest available captain is Hina of the Black Cage Fleet, but she is presently investigating an ongoing situation. The next available candidate is... Forget them. I was personally attacked by Monkey D. Luffy and I know some rank and file seaman isn't gonna cut it. Get someone with some real skills down here. I'm very sorry, sir, but the admirals are all presently stationed too far away to be of use to your urgent situation. Drat, wait, what about one of the Cipher Pols? Cross-referencing current CP stations now, the sound of shuffling papers and typing soon filled the line. Before the operator came back a minute later, we can deploy 3 agents of Cipher Pol 3 to your destination with an EPA of 30 minutes. Is that acceptable? Yes, that's perfect. Send them right away. Chapter 26. Scramble in the snow. The doctor, the reindeer and the agents. Miles of open blue water. A pleasant breeze from the west. Along the waves was a common trawler, no doubt looking to catch some valuable fish in its nets. Just another fishing vessel full of humble workers making their living off the bounty of the sea. And that was exactly the point. As the side of the ship opened up to reveal a half-submerged compartment where a high-velocity speedboat roared to life before skipping across the waves. The black boat was cutting edge, but unmarked. Passers-by would assume the 3 on board were just daredevils or perhaps explorers with too much money to burn. The trio inside were strange as well. 2 men and 1 woman, the latter being the driver of the high-speed vehicle. She had both hands on the controls, heedless of the sea spray splashing across her high cheeks and pink lips, or her long fire-red hair flapping behind her in its ponytail. Her black sunglasses kept the glare out of her eyes, her focus never wavering. The 2 men was looking much more casual. In the left seat was a man with his dirty blonde hair neatly tucked into a black fedora to match his jacket and slacks. He looked like he was fit for a night on the town. The only giveaway was him casually poking the air with enough force to create tiny sonic booms. The other man was a head shorter than both, only around 5.5 feet. With his bald head gleaming in the sun, his cardigan was a muted navy blue with long pants to fit the winter island they were heading to. So, looking forward to this one, Belle? The fedora-clad one asked with a smirk. Been a while since we got a distress call like this. Hey, you guys seeing this? The other man asked, holding up a stack of bounty posters. What's up with this crew? It's all women except for the captain. The boys at HQ sure want to find out, now that he's nicked another royal from her throne, Belle chuckled. But I can't wait to meet the guy and get an answer out of him. Ought to make the questioning session fun. The bald man quirked an eyebrow before reaching into his pocket, carefully taking out a wire brush before cleaning the barrel of his pistol. "You seem jazzed this morning. It's usually all business on a job. This isn't just the usual dead-brained plunderer we have here, Wick. We got us some random kid from the East Blue, planted his foot up the back end of every pirate there, made his way to the Grand Line with a queen, and now has a second one, all the while raising holy hell for Black Cage Hina herself. It's been a long time since I've gotten a good catch." The other agent rolled his eyes before glancing up at the sky, noticing the gray clouds creeping up above them. "Something tells me you're gonna cause a scene." "Oh, shush, Shiro, I won't break this one too much." "Oi," Wick said nothing but just rolled his eyes. Their leader might have been one of the most recognized CP agents outside of the current CP9, but she needed to get her head on straight. Today they were after Monkey D. Luffy and had to protect the king of their destination. It was only fitting for the closest thing to a private security branch the world government had. As Luffy put on a spare coat from Dalton's closet at the man's insistence, he ran through the plan one more time. He would be responsible for carrying Reiju up the Drum Rockies with a few of his crewmates to escort him. That team would include Cinderella, the only one familiar with the island's topography and wildlife; Moody, able to stop and incapacitate any attackers; and Desire, the best to protect Reiju with her barriers. The rest of the crew would split up amongst this village and the two closest ones. They would flag the doctor down and then report via transponder snail that Kureha was on her way. Once Luffy climbed the mountain and got Reiju up there, he hoped that this doctor had a snail so he could reach his crew and keep everyone in the loop. Soon, the Straw Hats headed outside. Luffy and his crew were equipped with some snowshoes and were bundled up in their warmest clothes. The only ones unbothered by the weather were Luffy and Cinderella, while several were already shivering. Heading up the first crew was Makino, who would be heading west to Coco Weed alongside Kaya, Carmen, Honey Queen and Ban. Leading the group east to Gyasta would be Kuina with Karina, Sally, Alvida and Makita following along. Staying here in Bighorn in case Kureha showed up here would be Nami, Najiko, Clarice, Custard and Vivi. "Now remember, be wary of the Lapins," Dalton warned the captain. "They like to gang up on any prey they see." "Thanks," Luffy nodded before marching out of Bighorn with his escorts behind him. They trudged through the snow, soon leaving the cozy houses and potential warmth of the village for the expansive winter. The only sounds were the snow crunching under their feet, the frigid winds blowing through the plains, and the gentle rustling of evergreen branches lining the path. "So, what was that about Lapins?" Moody asked, her pistols already in hand. They're these giant carnivorous rabbit monsters that like to mob people," Cinderella snorted, "but given how easily you all fucked up Wapol and his goons, they shouldn't be too much of a problem." As the crew traipsed ahead, Luffy couldn't help but glance at the scenery. Snow was a rare occurrence even at the peak of Mount Corvo, so seeing the white stuff blanket the landscape was new. The only reason he didn't stop and gawk was the feeling of Reiju on his back, her breathing steady but still too weak. Luffy, hang in there, girl," Desire said, "we ain't gonna let any overgrown bunnies stop us." As if right on cue, however, Luffy sensed a wave of hostile auras through his observation haki. From in between the trees ran several shadows the size of bears, furiously bounding through the snow until three of them rushed out right at Luffy and Reiju in a pincer maneuver plus one dead ahead. Moody fired 2 shots at the one on the right, successfully shooting it down. A barrier stopped the left one, crashing to the ground with a bleeding head. Cinderella then watched Luffy simply lunge under the last beast's claws before stretching up his leg, Gum Gum battle axe. With all the force of a guillotine, the captain's leg snapped down and instantly flattened the last Lapin. The former Princess of Drum could only stare in shock as she saw the fearsome predator lie on the ground, already dead in a small crater. "Hey, hunted bigger stuff than this back home," he sniffed, completely unfazed before continuing ahead. Cinderella just gulped. Wapol and his stupid guards would have had their hands full with just 3 of them, never mind a whole pack. "Damn, I really picked a good time to jump ship." For the first time in ages, Cinderella was optimistic, and she continued behind the Straw Hats. She watched them defeat more and more Lapins with little trouble, Luffy not getting a scratch, even having Reiju slung over his back the whole time. Once the beasts were handled, the pirates were about halfway to the base of the mountain when their guide had an idea. "Hey, wait a minute, there is another way to the castle." "I thought Wapol took down the cable car?" Moody asked. "Yeah, but there is a manual backup we can use. How do you feel about pedaling a bike?" Luffy just smiled. That was how the water filtration devices were powered on the Going Merry. He found it was a good warm-up before any major training session. With something like that, he wouldn't have to worry about hauling everybody up the mountain with him. Makino's group had good luck traveling through the snow, having run across a hunting party who saw 5 girls shivering in the cold and giving them a free ride to Coco Weed. As soon as they arrived, they tried asking around for Dr. Kureha, but nobody had seen her recently. At the very least, someone was nice enough to give them Dalton's number so they could report back to Bighorn. The girls now sat in a small bed and breakfast, embracing mugs of a fire. While they had no leads now, there was the chance the doctor could show herself. So, unless they received a call that Kureha had been located, they would stay put and wait to see. Since they had some time to kill, the conversation had turned to small talk. Ban was the most passive, simply chiming in and listening with interest as Kaya and Honey Queen traded stories of how their captain met them. She wasn't sure who to be more disgusted by. Kuro for his heinous plot or the Bear King for treating his own found family like garbage. Makino then noticed how unusually quiet Carmen was. The flamboyant peacock woman was staring into the flames, seeing 1,000 miles away. The first mate could already guess the problem. Worried about Reiju. Yes, every time I was in that kitchen without her, it felt so hollow. It's funny, I spent so long training to surpass her, and now we're practically sisters. Hey, don't get so down in the dumps, Kaya said. If Luffy is with her, then she'll get to Dr. Kureha. It's not him I'm worried about. The minute I saw him fighting a horde of Marines, I knew to never doubt him. No, it's just horribly ironic to me. Chefs are taught the dangers of food poisoning and cross-contamination at the very start of our training, to think that all of us would be sick if not for her. A firm hand rested on the chef's shoulder. She looked over to see Ban, her glasses off for a change. You know, Reiju and you both remind me of the palace chef back in Frost. He was so determined to feed people that he manages to turn vegetable peels and gristle into stew to serve to the hungry. Flattering as that is, how does that relate to our situation? Because he was one of the first people my esteemed advisors insisted I fire. Instead I kept him, and looked into the advisors stealing from the pantry or redirecting food shipments to go to their houses. The level of dedication you two have for feeding others is an admirable trait, and I firmly believe that a strong sense of character will be repaid in due time. Carmen's mood brightened at her words. Makino then chuckled, you know, I can't help but Luffy losing his favorite chef might motivate him too. She then promptly had to duck a fan before it hit her face, making the others laugh until the door to the bed and breakfast opened. The girls all turned to see a man in black business casual, a fedora on his head which he hung up before fully entering. The only clue he registered the cold were the snow boots he walked in, also black. Excuse me, ladies, could you help me locate someone? He asked cordially. The five all shared glances. Honey Queen slowly stood. That depends on who is asking. Oh, there's no need to be so jumpy. Me and a few friends of mine were just passing through. Wanted some directions. They're off checking some of the other towns. We know someone who wants to get their hands on a straw hat. The pirates just to see the man vanish before their eyes. He reappeared inches from Honey Queen before his finger effortlessly pierced her chest. He then slowly turned to the rest of the straw hats, suddenly glaring at them. Buckshot, Makino, Sparkling, Kaya, Wildfire, Carmen, Heartless, Honey Queen, and Royal Rounds, Ban de Destiny. All of you are under arrest. Come quietly. I have been authorized to use lethal force on all of you except the Queen of Frost Kingdom. Excuse me? The agent turned in shock to see Honey Queen just spoke to him. He then looked down and noticed her chest was made of translucent pink syrup. Before he could gasp, the former Trump pirate blasted a pink geyser directly into his face. As he rolled across the floor, now covered in sticky pink liquid, the other straw hats leapt into action. Kaya summoned a storm of gem shards and Ban fired multiple rounds from her pistol. Paper arts. The man shouted before bending and weaving between all of the projectiles like he was made of rubber. The straw hats all gawked until the rain of fire stopped, giving the man enough time to stand up straight before launching a furious volley of attacks that eventually forced Kaya through the bed and breakfast's main window. As she stood up from the shards of glass and snow, she had to roll aside to dodge a tempest kick. The five girls then booked it down the street and out of cocoa weed, trying to prevent any more collateral damage. The man in black rushed behind them, the fedora once again on his head to keep out any falling snow. As he ran, he reached into his pocket to grab his concealed portable transponder snail. This is Shiro of Cipher Pol 3. Spotted 5 of the Straw Hat Pirates, in active pursuit. No sign of King Wapol or Monkey D. Luffy. Roger that, a voice crackled from the other side. Remember, your first priority is to assure the safety of the island's ruler. Understood. Over and out. Gyosta was the largest settlement on Drum Island, with multiple snowy plazas and sidewalks carefully treated to avoid freezing over. When Kuina's group of the Straw Hats entered town, nobody paid the five much mind. After grabbing some hot cider to recover from the hike, they split up and asked if anyone had seen the eccentric doctor they needed. It didn't take long, however, to spot a commotion forming outside one of the many stores. The pirates gathered outside and gasped. They watched as a young boy went from shouting in pain to resting peacefully on a makeshift cot. A pair of worried parents watching as a woman raised now empty bottle from his lips. Despite the frigid weather, she was dressed in only a waist-long purple leather jacket over a belly-bearing top. Barely more sensible were the purple and pink bell-bottom jeans and loafers. Despite having a youthful body, Her face was wrinkled all over with long dirty blonde hair that they couldn't guess if it was dyed or natural. This woman grinned like a shark about to feed as she stared at the parents. "Alright then, for your payment, I'll be taking all of your food and toilet paper." "What?" the father yelled. "You can't just demand something like that." The Straw Hats were about to intervene only for the little boy to raise himself off the bed, looking like he just had a pleasant nap. "Wow, my stomach feels all better, thank you so much, doctor." The doctor woman's smile softened just enough. "Don't mention it, Squirt, it's just what I do." "That's her," the five of them thought, watching as the woman waltzed out of the building with her arms full of packages of supplies. She then walked to a nearby reindeer, one with a bright pink top hat in between its antlers and a blue nose, and set them down in a large sleigh. She turned just in time to see five ladies run up to her. Whoa, slow down," she said, a bottle of plum wine already in hand. "You girls can get my beauty tips some other time." "It's not that, we need your help," Nikita begged. "A friend of ours was poisoned and is on the verge of dying." Kureha immediately was all business, demanding a full rundown of Reiju's condition. The only shocker was hearing that her newest patient was en route to Drum Castle. "What, you mean on top of the mountain? Is this guy insane?" "No, he's Luffy," Karina assured her, "and odds are, he's halfway up there already. So, please, just help our cook. We'll pay you whatever you ask." Chopper. Double time back to the castle. She hopped into the sleigh without another word and sped off, though they could have sworn the reindeer nodded as if he could understand her. The girls all breathing a sigh of relief. That was half of their mission accomplished. All they needed to do now was call the others and let them know Reiju's doctor was on her way. Just as they were about to ask around for the nearest transponder snail they could use, they noticed a bald man in formal wear walking towards them. He stared at them with such determination that all the pirates felt a chill down their spine. And yet, despite his harsh glare, he was perfectly civil as he stood before them. "Excuse me, I need to find someone. His name is Monkey D. Luffy." Apt a hand on their weapon as Karina said, "You should stay away from him, sir. He's a very dangerous pirate." The man in black chuckled. "Is that so? Then maybe you all should find a different career in life." Nikita leapt hundreds of feet in the air. Sally and Karina leapt back as Kuina and Alvida rushed at him with their weapons. Both had to duck in a split second before a pair of black pistols nearly shot them both in the face. They noticed that, rather than metal bullets, the guns shot concentrated bursts of air that whizzed by with the same speed as a bullet. The people of Gyasta ran inside while the Straw Hats split up to force the gunmen to choose who to go after. Unfortunately for them, it turns out he didn't have to. "Triplicate," he shouted before two identical copies appeared beside him and rushed off after Alvida and Sally. Nikita jumped across multiple rooftops as another assassin chased her. Kuina and Karina ducked into a nearby alleyway to escape the third. "This is Wig to base. I have encountered the Straw Hat Pirates in Gyasta. Neither Luffy nor King Wapol is in the area." "Copy that, Wig. Shiro is pursuing more of the crew. It seems the captain is giving us the slip. Continue after those pirates. And please be more careful with our experimental firearms. We don't need another lecture from Vegapunk." "I'll do my best," the agent said with a coy smirk. He was a trained gunman given the only guns in the world that fired hyper-compressed air for ammo. And thanks to this triple fruit, he had 6 of them to play around with. How could he not show off a little? Back in Bighorn, Nami and the rest of the crew happily waiting inside of Dalton's news by the transponder snail for any word. The armchairs around the fire made for a perfect place for the ladies to unwind after all the worrying over Reiju. That is, until a voice bellowed from outside. "Attention, my loyal subjects, your king has returned." "Oh crap, not this guy again," Clarice muttered as she set down her tea. "Come on, let's kick his ass again." "Vivi, you stay here," Nami insisted. "No offense, but we don't need him recognizing you." The Alabastan heiress nodded. She wasn't exactly keen on seeing Wapol again, either. The 4 Straw Hats headed out into the snow to see the tubby tyrant himself along with dozens of his gun-toting goons. At his sides were Chess and Kuromarimo, smirking even in the face of the pirates who whooped them already. The people of Bighorn were all flinching at the sight of their king again. Dalton stood up front with a massive spade in his hand as a makeshift weapon. "Wapol, you've finally returned," he grimaced before the tiniest grin appeared on his face. "Apparently, you ran into some pirate trouble on your return voyage." The king snarled, especially as he turned to see Nami's group. "Yes, and it was thanks to these broads and their rubber-headed captain. Hand them over, right now." Custard and Najiko stepped forward, sword and seeds in grasp. The former Big Mom pirate stood firm. "We have no desire to fight you again. The result would be the same." "Oh, would it now?" The pirates turned to see a woman in red march through the snow. The whole assembly was frozen as she locked eyes with Wapol before reaching into her pocket for a transponder snail. "This is Bell to base. Monarch has been located. Several of the Straw Hat pirates are antagonizing him, but no sign of Luffy." "Copy that. Engage the pirates and discern their captain's location, preferably alive." If you insist, she chuckled, making the pirates nervous. Anyone who was that confident walking into a fight was a problem. Who are you supposed to be? Dalton asked. This man is very dangerous, you need to. At ease, Mr. Dalton. This is officially world government business. I'll be handling this now. Nami and Clarice just shrugged. This was clearly no ordinary member of the Navy, and she was apparently talking directly to Marineford. None of them noticed that Vivi was staring through the windows, biting her nails. She already had a hunch who exactly this woman was with. Alright, ladies, listen up. We can make this whole ordeal a whole lot easier if y'all tell me what I want to know. Where's Monkey D. Luffy? Like we're gonna tell you. Clarice transformed into her half-rhino form and barreled ahead only for Belle to step just out of the way before something flew out of the agent's sleeve. The pirate was soon held in place as a thick sash wrapped around her waist. What the fabric? Ah, you ladies ain't the only ones who got devil fruits, Belle chuckled, revealing that the bands were now coming out what should be her arms. From the sleeves of her jacket came a massive stream of shiny white silk that held Clarice in place as it came out of one arm, wrapped around the rhino woman's torso, and then back through the other arm. Belle then shocked everyone by immediately spinning around on her heels, Clarice yelling in shock as she was held firm by the silken sash until it suddenly disappeared. The woman was sent flying for hundreds of yards, well past the border of Bighorn and felled several trees in the process. Well, crap, Nami swallowed. That's right, honey. I ate the silk fruit, and I know how to use it. Now then, are you more inclined to point me in the direction of your captain? My superiors are just aching to get to know him. The navigator glanced at her sister, a resolute nod being her only answer. They both stared at Custard, seeming to toy with something in her mouth. No? Ah well. Guess I'm just gonna have to persuade you. Belle rushed at them like a rocket. A red blur sticking out from the stark white all around them. The trio of pirates scattered, only for Belle to have the perfect answer. Silk crochet. Panopticon, once again. Her arms disappeared as columns of silk exploded from her sleeves, this time wrapping around the outer railings of various houses and the trees hundreds of feet away to create a silken ring that encircled them all. Several of the locals wanted to help only for Wapol's guards to point their guns at them. Custard immediately went for the nearest sash and swung her sword down only for the blade to bounce off. It took the woman doubling her grip to make sure it didn't fly away. What? How is it this tough? Not just tough, but elastic, Belle bragged. This stuff has the tensile strength better than any rope but has enough give that it can bounce back from any impact. And I can make as much as I want and control it as easily as I walk or blink. Now to show you all my real specialty. Close quarters combat. Belle moved with all the speed and tenacity of a predator, the snow or her heels doing nothing to slow her down. Nijiko tried readying her seeds but the agent's foot collided into her left ankle with the force of a gunshot. The brunette was down on the snow about to shout only for vicious blow to her solar plexus to render her unconscious. Get away from my sister, you bitch, Nami roared, a huge wall of clouds twice her height spawning around her. The puffy nimbus barrier soon turned black, as if responding to Nami's rage. Belle just smirked as bands of silk suddenly burst from her waist and started wrapping around everything except her eyes. The navigator unleashed a wave of lightning, but the bolts just bounced off Belle. Nami stopped her attack in shock, letting the agent shave in front of her and coating her hands in armament haki before sucker punching Nami in the gut followed by a left hook that knocked her out. Oh, did I mention that silk is an excellent insulator against electricity? She bragged. Now then, you fancy yourself a swordsman? Custard raised her blade in anger only to see Belle summon one of her own, one of silk so tightly wound that it looked like a solid white sword with the curved blade of a cutlass. Belle waggled her eyebrows and said, "On guard." The Charlotte woman grit her teeth as their swords clashed, the silk somehow holding up against solid steel. Belle's swings were wide and blunt, not much into hot, plenty of power behind every attack. She also proved to have reflexes that put even Custard to shame, even as she tried using observation haki to predict her movements. If only I could have spent more time with Katakuri, she sighed before Belle decided to cut the fight short with a finger gun straight into Custard's wrist. She dropped her blade in pain before she was wrapped up in silk from the neck down and left to thrash in the snow. Before Belle could move on, a loud stomping came from the woods. Clarice, now in full rhino form, burst out of the tree line and actually ripped through the silk blocking her path. The agent only barely leapt out of the way but the rhino woman wasn't done. Halfway through her charge, Clarice shifted back into half-rhino form before swinging her leg in a tempest kick strong enough to bring up a wave of snow. The agent did the smart thing and leapt above it only for a fully grown pine tree to almost slam into her. She had to hurriedly morph her leg into a silk chainsaw to slice it apart, looking down to see Nijiko back on her feet and glaring at her. Damn, these girls really are something, she thought, using moonwalk at the last second to break her fall. She was face to face with a small circle of Clarice, Custard and Nijiko all looking tired but still raring to go. It was only when she turned around that she noticed someone keenly watching from inside Dalton's house that she finally found an idea. Silk shot. From her wrist came a single, compact bullet of fabric that flew through the window in seconds. Vivi had to duck or else it would have shot through her face. But by the time she was crawling away from the window, the door burst open and Belle had her wrapped and bound in a silk cocoon. MMMMPH, HLLLMMMPH, Vivi, Najiko cried. Oh, this is a friend of yours? Belle smirked. Well now, let me try asking again. Where can I find Monkey D. Luffy? I'll be more than happy to let her go if you'll comply. The Straw Hats looked from one to the other. They promised Vivi they'd get her to Alabasta, but Reiju would still be in bad shape. Could they risk their chef's safety just to get Vivi free? In the end, someone made the decision for them. Dalton dropped his head and said, he's on his way to Drum Castle. Thank you very much, sir, I'll be back to resolve this dispute once I bring him in. And true to her word, Belle tore the princess's binding open and set her down on the ground where a still shaky Nami checked on her. Before the pirates could retaliate, Belle zoomed off like a rocket. The Straw Hats were then met with several guns cocking in their direction. Ahahahaha. That ought to teach you no good pirates not to cross King Wapol, Kuromarimo. Restrain them. Chess, go check on their ship to recover my valuables. Like hell you will, Dalton growled. We've had enough of your tyranny, Wapol. These pirates were minding their own business when you started this. And now you've gone and brought the Cipher Pols in this. The legions of goons turned their guns on the burly man, even though several of them stepped back. Wapol, however, just wore the same grin on his tin-plated face. Oh, Dalton, always the bleeding heart. Why don't you learn that going against me is a mistake? The man's response was to activate his own devil fruit, the ox fruit. Model, bison. His already burly frame expanded as deep brown fur-covered skin, his feet turned to cloven hooves, and his face became a bovine muzzle with curled horns emerging from his dark hair. And as long as I stand, I will never let you rule again. So, you'll defy me even now? Very well, it's your funeral. Dalton was about to charge ahead only for Nami's group to stand alongside him. He only nodded before they charged together, united in the common goal of knocking this tin-pot tyrant off his high horse. The last thing Reiju remembered clearly, it was spewing a few gallons of poison at a talking hippo that was trying to eat Luffy. Now, as she came to, she felt something cold against her forehead. Warm linens kept her snug in a fluffy mattress that felt heavenly. She moved her hair aside and realized she was in a room of stone, shelves of books and beakers of all kinds lining the walls. For the briefest second, she was terrified until she heard a voice through the door. How is she, doctor? Luffy, her eyes almost overflowed with gratitude. The mad lad had actually saved her life. She's stabilized for now, an older female voice answered, but I'm questioning her when the time comes. By all accounts, her organs should be soup. She gulped at that, before something cracked open the door. She watched in surprise as a small reindeer, only about 3 feet tall, walked in on 2 legs. Okay, the reindeer talked to itself, making Reiju wonder if she was hallucinating. Blood pressure stable. Need to remember those special nettles for next time. Can't believe how doctoring just knows these things off the top of her head. Hi? The little deer spun around, dropping the stack of books in its hooves. Reiju then noticed the creature was wearing a fluffy pink top hat, had a bright blue nose, and was in fact fully aware she could hear it. It then tried to hide behind the nearest table, by hiding only his arms behind the leg while most of its body was fully visible. I think I heard something, Luffy said from elsewhere, walking in only to rush up and hug his cook. Luffy. Where are we? This is Drum Castle, at the top of the mountains Dalton told me about. I brought up a cable car with some of the crew and Wapol's ex, so he could make sure the doctor could treat you. I can't believe it, you saved me, again. Hey, don't sweat it, I'd do anything for my crew. He just gave a giant grin, the joy so infectious that Reiju's face lit up in a blush. She then noticed the walking reindeer trying to subtly gather the books and walk away. She moved her eye down to follow it and Luffy noticed. Oh, and this is Chopper. He's the doctor's assistant, he's awesome. Huh? Cut it out, you stupid pirate. You aren't gonna sweet-talk me? The reindeer blushed profusely through his fur, dancing in place with a huge dopey grin on his face. The chef just chuckled. If he helped look after her, then she would thank him too once she was better. Alright, give my patient some space, Kureha ordered as she walked in, a bottle of plum wine in one hand. Chopper, go study for a bit. This could take a while. Yes, doctorine. With that, the reindeer walked out leaving Reiju with her captain and the woman who cured her. So you're Dr. Kureha? I cannot thank you enough for saving my life. Don't get mushy on me, girly. I handle shit like this every day. The doctor took a deep swig of her booze before sitting down in a nearby chair. What you can do is explain what happened. The Straw Hat here only told me you all started falling ill after some bad booze and you somehow siphoned all the poison out of everybody so only you got sick. Reiju only nodded, telling mostly the same story. Kureha looked straight in her eyes, clearly searching for any sign of confusion but sighed when she couldn't find any. And here I thought it was just an exaggeration. Kid, if anybody else did what you did, you wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. We only know it was some kind of poison, Luffy said, but when we drank the grog, it tasted fine. That was exactly the point. Your liquor was laced with an extremely rare toxin called alcoholine. On its own, it's completely inert and harmless. When exposed to any alcohol, it becomes a parasitic microbe that attacks the nerves and vital organs like cancer hopped up on steroids. It's only grown on one tiny island in the North Blue and fetches close to 10 million bears an ounce. But that tiny amount is all you'd need to put an entire ship of people 6 feet under. Someone wanted you dead, someone with deep pockets and connections to the highest levels of the underworld. Well, we already knew that part, Reiju sighed. It makes sense that crocodiles have access to the entire black market. Luffy just ground his fists, swearing he beat the bastard even harder for doing this to his crew. It makes sense those MDs you got from Wapol wouldn't recognize the stuff. They only grow a couple bottles of the stuff per year because of just how illegal it is. It's among the top of the Marine's contraband list. Even having it on your boat is a one-way trip to impel down. But enough about that. She stared right at Reiju and pointed a bony finger at her. I've seen some insane things thanks to devil fruits, and according to this brat, yours is a zone that turns you into a lion. So if that's not it, how the hell does a girl suck poison out of people and prove resistant enough to chugging dozens of doses of grade A biotoxin that would make anyone's insides melt? Reiju could only sigh. She knew it was only a matter of time. It all started when I was born. In the North Blue, there was once an entire empire called Germa that stretched for hundreds of miles with dozens of islands. Now, though, it's a single mobile island called Germa Kingdom. It's renowned for its scientific advancements, and as the premier source for criminals to hire men for their ranks. My father, Judge, continued his family's desire to reform their empire and expand even further. To that end, he wanted to create a serum that would turn any ordinary person into a superior breed of soldier. One that was stronger, fearless, completely obedient to their commander. And to do so, he tested this serum on my mother. Luffy just gaped. What? That's disgusting. What kind of sick bastard does that to his own kid? He does, and sure enough I was born with the enhanced physiology he wanted. I could bend metal as a child, solve complex equations before I could walk, and I even had a special ability to not only ingest any poison with next to no consequences but I could produce a toxin of my own. I was poison pink, Reiju. And I was sure to fetch a high price once I was old enough to serve in our family's army. But there was one small problem. Physically I met his expectations, but I was too soft, too outspoken, and so he got to work perfecting the serum. And to make sure this one worked, he had my mother artificially inseminated with as many children as she could carry. She gave birth to quadruplets, but at great cost to her health. The 4 sons were exactly what Judge wanted. All 4 of them were cruel, selfish, violent little terrors who had all of my physical enhancements and more with none of the weakness that held me back. But since I was still a possible commodity, he didn't abandon me. No, he did far worse as he put me through the same grueling training as them and belittled me at every turn for not measuring up to them. And all of them would tease and bully me mercilessly, calling me a worthless failure. Luffy moved next to her and placed a comforting hand on hers as she went on, eyes watering in pain. One day, we were all eating when I noticed that the girl serving us was nothing but skin and bones. I offered to share my food with her, and Judge ripped me away from the table, locked my head in an iron mask, and left me in a dungeon for days to punish my foolishness. That was the last straw. I begged to my mother, now practically bedbound, that I wanted to die. I'd rather be anywhere else than here. Her resolve finally gave out as she remembered Sora, the kind blonde who somehow stood by her even through all of Judge's experiments and abuse towards their children. Sora just looked at her suffering daughter and swore that she wouldn't fail her like she failed her sons. I found a tunnel that led out of the castle and so I ran, never looking back. I hopped on a ship bound for the East Blue, and that's when I became a chore girl on a little passenger ship to survive. Then Zeph attacked with his pirate crew, but then a storm hit and washed us both onto a rocky plateau in the middle of the ocean. He saved my life by giving me all of the food we had, and so I planned to help him build and run his dream restaurant to repay the debt I owed him. The real father who gave me a passion for cooking, who didn't mind that I wasn't a killing machine, for giving me a reason to live. Reiju, I'm so sorry you had to go through all that. Luffy let his cook's head rest on his shoulder. I swear, I'll never let that bastard hurt you again. I hate him so much, Luffy. Germa Kingdom may be part of the world government, but it wants to conquer the North Blue. My mother tried to make an antiserum that would stop my brothers from becoming the little monsters they were, but it didn't work. That's why I never use the poison powers I have, because I refused to use what he forced into me. I only broke when Don Krieg made it clear he wouldn't stop coming after the Bharati, and I felt so ashamed of it. Luffy nodded. Seeing his cook so broken and distraught only made his resolve stronger. If anyone from this Germa crossed him, he would make them pay. What about your brothers? They're now the loyal heads of Germa 66, the kingdom's army and underworld hands for hire. As miserable as they made me, I don't blame them. It's all thanks to Judge, stripping them of their free will while they were still zygotes. That's what my real dream is, Luffy. To kill Judge and free my siblings from his control." He nodded, letting the last of her pain come out. Kore had just left to give them the privacy they needed. Even she didn't feel like discussing payment for her services after hearing all of that. But little did she know that she had another problem on its way. At the foot of the cable up the Drum Rockies, Belle casually reapplied her lipstick. A pile of dead lapins laid behind her before she pulled out her transponder snail. "This is Belle to HQ. I am about to engage Monkey D. Luffy." "Copy that. Your comrades are presently engaging others of the Straw Hat crew. If we don't hear back in 15 minutes, we're sending backup. It is absolutely imperative we capture this man and put a stop to his piracy before he appends things like he did in the East Blue." "Understood, but I believe I've run into something else. What can you tell me about Princess Vivi of Alabasta?" A bit of typing later, the operator replied, "Her whereabouts have been unknown for almost 2 years now. King Cobra has remained silent on the topic when questioned. Why bring this up now? Can you give me a physical description of the princess?" In her last known photo, Nefertari Vivi was about 5'4", though she was only about 15, so she's bound to be taller now. Bright cyan hair, round face, very slim figure. Belle just smiled, knowing she recognized a royal when she saw one. Well now, that looks exactly like a friend of the Straw Hat Pirates who happens to be named Vivi. "What? You saw her with those pirates? What the flying fuck is she doing with them? Don't get your panties in a bunch. I've got a bit of a climb to make now, so I'll tell you all about it on my way up." Rather than wait for the cable car, she formed a makeshift harness around her torso and commanded a sash of silk to wrap about the cable connecting to the ground. As she began to debrief the operator at Marineford, she could only smile. She was just as eager to learn where Luffy found a third princess to pilfer for his crew. "Monkey D. Luffy, I haven't had a good fight in ages. You better be ready for little ol' me." Chapter 27. The Battle for Drum Island, Straw Hats vs Cipher Pols. While Luffy and Reiju were reconnecting, Cinderella was showing the other girls around the castle. The Straw Hats were all shocked to find the central chamber of the castle was blanketed with snow and buffeted by the harsh winds. The ex-fiancé was about to shut the door only to spot the bird's nest perched on top of the front door. Nobody blamed her when she kept it open. They were also shocked when they first met Chopper, as he was off in one of the many small laboratories set up in the castle's halls. The reindeer was much more relaxed meeting them and was now excitedly showing off his medical books and experiments. "Well, I'm one step closer to experience in everything," Desire sighed, a talking reindeer doctor. "Hush," Moody said, "you'd know better than anyone all the strange things that pirates and crooks get involved in." "Oh yeah, you guys are pirates," Chopper blurted in the middle of his babbling. "What's your ship like? What adventures have you had? How'd you beat up that jerk Wapol?" Like he was an oversized kickball, Cinderella cackled. Bastard's whole army got mopped across the floor in 5 seconds flat. The young doctor could only giggle sadistically, enough to make the ladies all wonder if Chopper had something personal against the king. The only real question the women now had was how Chopper's devil fruit worked. "Oh, I was actually a normal reindeer. Then one day I ate the human fruit, which let me walk on 2 legs and talk." "Not bad, kid. And if you're treating Reiju okay, then that's alright with me. By the way, you got a transponder snail anywhere? We need to let the rest of the crew know about Reiju." "Oh, sure, it should be around here somewhere." The reindeer then led them through more rooms, including the expansive kitchen and multiple bathrooms, until they found one sitting on a table. Moody dialed in the number to Dalton's snail only to receive nothing but a dial-up tone. "Huh, nobody picked up. That's not promising," Desire groused. "They're supposed to be waiting for us. And speaking of which, why haven't we gotten a call?" Dalton had Kore his number, so he ought to have heard something. The sound of a door creaking open cut them off. The doctor herself walked in, muttering something about "that damn brat," before taking another swing of her plum wine. "Alright, long story short, Reiju will be fine. Thanks to the antidote I gave her, the poison's progression has stopped. Give her about a day of bed rest and the proper nutrition and she'll be right as rain." The Straw Hats breathed a collective sigh of relief, even as Kureha mentioned she would discuss her fee with Nami afterwards. Moody and Desire looked at each other and gulped. They honestly weren't sure which one was scarier when it came to money. A little bit later, Luffy was bundled up in his borrowed winter coat outside. Now that his crewmate was on the road to recovery, he was taking the time to appreciate the view. The Drum Rockies made Mount Corvo look like an anthill in comparison, and he was amazed that he could see the perimeter of the entire island beneath him. That all changed when his observation haki rang out and he could sense it. Someone running up the cable car line leading back to the ground, and coming up fast. He walked over to the parked gondola and watched from inside it as a silhouette came into view. A woman in red was sprinting on the cable, with some kind of fabric harness keeping her secure. He then ducked just in time as a knife of some sort shot through where his face just was, watching in shock as the woman who threw it flew above him seconds later. She lowered her sunglasses to wink at him before flying through the cable car's windows and landing on the mountaintop. My, Mr. Monkey D. Luffy, you're a very difficult man to find, she said, taking off her shades to reveal a pair of piercing green eyes staring at him. You do have good taste in scenery, though. Thanks. Who are you and why'd you just try to kill me? The woman just chuckled. Well, let's see, wanted for 75 million beres, interfering with world government-affiliated royalty, possible kidnapping charges, you're a bona fide criminal, Luffy, you tell me. The pirate just scowled. He figured it was only a matter of time before the Marines sent somebody higher up the food chain after him. Alright, so you want to arrest me, but you do know who you're serving, right? That Wapol's way worse than I'll ever be. If you have a formal complaint, file a form like everyone else. As a member of Cipher Pol 3, my duty is to stop any immediate threats to the leader of a sanctioned nation when summoned. I may not like the man myself, but I'm only doing my job. TCH, Luffy just scoffed. He had seen firsthand where that, I'm just doing my job, mentality led. His grandfather used it at every turn when it came to the less than savory aspect of his job. The two rivals stood and stared at each other, the only noise being the howling wind all around them. Then, at once, they launched at each other. Shave. Luffy and Bell were locking hands in a second, the only sign they moved being the footprints in the snow and the sonic boom that launched around them. Bell blinked at seeing someone other than her and her men perform one of the 6 powers, but she didn't have time to ask further. Luffy's foot swept at her ankles, forcing the CP agent to throw her arms up and jump out of the way. Silk crochet. Heavyweight. Bell's hands disappeared into strands of her signature fabric, wrapping around themselves multiple times to form large cream-colored boxing gloves. Heard you're a beast with just your fists, she cajoled, care to prove it? Luffy just rolled his eyes but complied. He readied a gum pistol and aimed right at her face, but Bell swerved like an expert boxer and soon landed a right hook to the rubber man's face. Then her smile faltered when Luffy turned his head, like her fist wasn't there. He glared at her, hard enough to make her realize that she now had his full attention. His own punch soon slammed into her gut, sending Bell rolling through the snow until she crashed into the castle's outer wall. What's going on? Chopper yelled as he rushed outside, the rest of the Straw Hats sans Reiju along with him. It's a Cipher Pol agent here to capture me. Where's the doctor? Tending to her patient, Moody answered, and that means she doesn't need any distractions from the likes of you. Bell just chuckled as she stood up, spitting out a glob of blood before turning to see Cinderella glaring at her. I should have known Wapol would be enough of a coward to call for someone. Didn't think he'd actually go for the professionals. Well, miss, you can be pissy with your fiancé on your own time. All I'm here to do is make sure nothing bad happens to your king and… What? Chopper screeched. You want to help Wapol? Are you kidding? We should be the ones getting help. He's ruined our lives? If Bell was shocked by a walking, talking reindeer, she didn't show it. She just raised her arm, about to make another silken barricade, when she had to duck a rubbery fist from clocking her again. You can fight me all you want, but don't raise a hand against my friends. Hurt them, and you're gonna regret it. Hey, I was told you fancy yourself a man of valor. Very well then, Captain, let's see just what your crew is like. As Shiro ran through the snow-blanketed woods, miles outside of Cocoweed, he had to admit it. These Straw Hats were something special. Cipher Pol 3 were the highest level called on for private security matters by world government nations. CP1 dealt with minor incursions, often just investigating civil disputes and disobedience. CP2 were for busting any local drug trade or underground insurrection group. But an all-out attack on a ruler, or anything urgent like a hostage situation, that was where they came in. And as far as these ladies went, Shiro admitted it was only thanks to his keen obes still had a bead on them. They immediately split up and their footprints were being filled in by the falling snow. Then, just as he was about to leap up for a better view, an echoing bang drew all his attention. Several more followed and the agent had to place a hand on his hat as he leapt, cartwheeled and weaved around several bullets that seemed to turn corners and come back at him. Son of a, he grumbled after one close call too many calls, jumping out of range and then using moonwalk to push himself above the canopy of pine needles. He then looked to see Makino and Carmen soaring up to get him, both glaring as the latter shifted into her full peacock form. He was shocked once again to see them both leap off the air, clearly using moonwalk. Both ladies soon fell through the air, kicking and striking at Shiro. As they hit the peak of their jump, Makino went in with a barrage of blows with each capped off with a burst of shotgun fire. The agent took a bad hit to the arm, forced to put some space between him and his quarry. His ended up barely landing on a tree branch. Okay, stay away from the one with green hair, he muttered as he hastily wrapped his left arm in gauze. Trying to punch a walking shotgun, not my best idea. He only got a brief reprieve as soon as storm of gem flechettes forced him to jump or become a pincushion. He launched several tempest kicks in the direction, making Kaya do the same. As soon as he saw the blonde touch down, he rushed in even as she summoned more glimmering shots. Now, Shiro turned to the left just too late to see a massive rush of pink syrup sweep him off his feet. He just make out Honey Queen's smirking face in the miniature flood. He was only saved from drowning in sugary liquid by smashing face first into a tree. As he coughed and sputtered, a resounding bang made him turn and see a .38 caliber bullet lodge into the tree trunk an inch from the tip of his nose. Now then, let's try to be a bit more diplomatic, Ban crooned, holding up her revolver, because it's pretty obvious by now you're no match for all 5 of us. Shiro just rolled his eyes as he shuffled himself up to a seated position, leaning back against the tree. Well, this is going to make the boss unhappy. And what boss would that be? Makino asked, keeping her foot on his outstretched leg. Just a little insurance that he wouldn't try anything if he didn't want that limb blown off. The world government. Who else could it be? The Straw Hats exchanged a moment of relief. They assumed he was an assassin sent by Crocodile. Alright then. You're clearly no rank and file marine. Let me guess, Cipher Pol? Hee hee, well done, your once royal majesty. Yes, Shiro of Cipher Pol 3. Has requested to assist one King Wapol of Drum. Something about your captain kidnapping his bride and causing havoc. Sir, by all accounts Wapol is the real villain here, Carmen argued. He's rounded up and executed all the island's doctors, then held the rest as his own private medical staff so the populace has to beg him for medical attention. Look, we all know Wapol is a douchebag, but that's not my prerogative. We protect the leaders of affiliated nations, we go home and get a nice performance bonus. That's the long and short of it, so let's skip the morality chat and tell me your terms. The ladies all looked at each other, Ban just shrugging. We don't have any terms, sir. That made Shiro blink. Wait, what? You're not going to hold me hostage? No, Kaya blinked. No offense, but you don't really have anything we want. Then why the hell did just run for like 5 miles out in the forest if you could have beat me down? Well, after trashing that inn, we figured it would be best to avoid collateral damage, Honey Queen said simply, although I ought to pay you back for almost killing me. He closed his eyes and braced himself. If these girls knew 6 powers, then there was nothing stopping her from giving him a finger gun straight to the heart. Any second her digit would plunge into his chest, ending him in seconds. Before his eyes flew open, squealing in pain as Honey Queen's heeled foot slammed down right between his legs. The other Straw Hats all winced in pain, even as Shiro slumped to the side. There, now I'd say we're even. Point taken, the agent squeaked, have a nice day. Well, this could have gone better, Makino sighed, come on, let's head back to the others in Bighorn. I just hope somebody found Kureha by now. As the girls rushed back to Cocoa Weed so they didn't get lost among the evergreens, Shiro was grateful for the cold snow providing some small comfort to his manhood. It wouldn't help how humiliated he would be when this got back to Belle. Please tell me the others are doing better. As the people of Gyosta cowered in their homes, all 3 copies of Wick scoured the streets for Kuina's section of the crew. His observation haki might have been able to track one of them down easily, but 5 meant he had to split his focus even with his devil fruit. He had to admit, these really were no riffraff. Everyone at Marineford knew Wapol was a cowardly, sniveling prat who would be nothing without his royal status. But alas, his island provided funds and was, as far as his higher-ups were concerned, leading the foremost source of medical research in the world. When Wick arrived, he expected a bunch of pirates drunkenly attacking everyone and everything in sight while the captain was doing unspeakable things to the soon-to-be queen that would be round up without too much issue. Instead, not only did they split up, but they were proving annoyingly hard to pin down. He then swatted away a bee, at least the 3rd one he'd seen so far, and paused. What was a bee doing on a freezing cold island with no flowers? He turned and fired an air bullet just in time to stop Kuina, who was leaping at him, sword poised to decapitate him. He fired at her feet, forcing her to dance backwards until she jumped off the roof, and then sprinted down the alley. His gun was trained on her until a shadow cast over his eyes. Wick looked up just to see Makita crashing towards him. He fired up several shots but the air bullets plucked against her skin and shoes. Rather than smashing through the rooftop, she came to a stop and nearly smacked him with her parasol. Now it was her turn to use paper arts as she dodged and weaved around his shots long enough for Kuina to impale him through the stomach. GHRK, damn, never gets easier, Wick said before poofing into smoke. The two figured he had to have some sort of devil fruit to make copies of himself, but they never imagined one would just pop like a balloon. Elsewhere, Sally was commanding a hail of bees to wall the other copy of Wick in while Alvida got up close and personal. Since the bullets didn't slide off her since they had no physical mass, they stung her bones hard enough to make her wince. Figures, the one gun that doesn't use bullets, she grumbled before swinging her mace in a wide arc, forcing the agent to duck. He readied one gun at her knee only for a swarm to suddenly rush at him. While his air bullets blew up several dozen insects, dozens more were still buzzing about. Rather than panic, Wick leapt as high as he could to escape the bees. There you are. The agent turned just in time to see Karina flying up on and sending a sonic clap so loud that it sent the clone soaring out of town and all the way to the island's coast before poofing out of existence. Once the volume woman touched down, the Straw Hats gathered on the empty street. Okay, so that takes care of one. Any others? I stuck it to one, and since it wasn't a bloody mess that must have been a copy, Kuina reported, so, where's the real one? Duck, Mikita shouted, just in time as more air shots fired over them. They all turned to see Wick, both air guns trained on them. Alright, you ladies have some explaining to do. That copy of mine saw a wrecked pirate ship at the coast right before he popped. When did you all call for backup? How backup? Alvida yelled, and how did you see something your clone saw? My triple fruit lets me make 2 identical copies. They retain everything from my equipment to my memories, and once they expire, I get all their memories. Makes it perfect for reconnaissance. So, I'll ask again, who did you call for backup? The girls all scratched their brains, especially as they saw Wick make 2 more copies. They'd be stuck in this cat and mouse game all day at this rate. That was when Sally had an idea. Describe what this ship looked like, or did you catch what the Jolly Roger was? A circular-shaped vessel with an unusually armored hull. The Jolly Roger had the same metal plates around a very wide mouth. Sound familiar? The girls all rolled their eyes. Of course, that bastard wouldn't know when to quit. Sally, however, then had an idea that made her smile like a cat that caught the canary. Why, good sir, we know the owner of that ship, but it's no friend of ours. In fact, it happens to belong to King Wapol of Drum. For the first time, the agent's calm demeanor cracked. That's preposterous. A royal pretending to be a pirate. That's nonsense. You all better be honest or I'm adding slander to your representative sheet. The former queen just tittered, like this was all a funny misunderstanding. Well, sir, if you don't believe us, then why not cross-reference the Jolly Roger with your superiors? As a Cipher Pol agent, I'm sure you have the means to contact the Marines at a moment's notice. Fine. But pull anything funny, and more copies here will up the air pressure on these guns to maximum. The 5 all watched as the duo of fakes hopped down from the roof, firearms trained on them the whole time while the original pulled out a portable transponder snail and dialed his handlers. A few minutes later, though, the agent went slack-jawed. His clones immediately vanished as he shouted into the receiver. WHAAAAT? The Tin Tyrant Pirates? They've been raiding ships for months? Affirmative. The description you gave matches their Jolly Roger to a T. They mostly steal provisions from passing ships and then sink the boats afterwards. And you're telling me that King Wapol himself is apparently the captain of this vessel? Based off of outside information, yes. However, I'll need to run recon to confirm this. This could potentially mean Wapol has violated the ISAP. Permission to deviate from mission granted. Find information that confirms Wapol's link to this pirate crew. Over and out. Wick then hung up, turning to see that the Straw Hats bolted as soon as his clones were gone. Well, so much for getting the Queen of Goa back. Oh well, a world government ruler becoming a criminal is far more important. And knowing Belle, she's too caught up fighting Luffy to notice anything. High atop the Drum Rockies, the Straw Hats ended up getting some unlikely assistance from Chopper. The human reindeer proved to be a decent fistfighter once he shifted into his human form, changing from a tiny fluffy biped to a hulking 7-foot-tall Goliath complete with proper hands he curled into fists. Now Belle stood with him and Luffy on one side while Moody and Desire leveled a pair of guns and a baseball bat that was lying around. To many, 4-on-1 would be a terrifying prospect. Belle's lipstick-coated smile made it clear she was waiting for a moment like this. Silk crochet. Reaper, from the bands of silk that formed out of her arms came a massive 4-foot-long scythe. The fabric around the blade thin and gleaming like a razor. She spun the new weapon so fast that it blurred into a beige saw blade that she threw fast enough that it was only Desire's barrier that saved Moody from being sliced in half. Luffy rushed in with a roar, enraged as Belle summoned a second scythe. She swung and cleaved, the weapon's reach forcing Luffy back. He lashed out with haki-fueled punches and kicks that made her arms shake with every hit of her blade, until he caught the tip in an iron body-aided grip and ripped away. Gum Gum Bazooka. Belle had to bend backwards, limbo style, to dodge the double-handed attack only to spin aside as Moody opened fire. As soon as the bullets stopped, Desire charged and tried to brain her with her wooden plank. A finger gun to the wrist stopped her before a blow to the solar plexus knocked her out. Moody was about to fire again when a pair of Tempest kicks sent her flying into the snow. She then turned to Chopper, only to find him back in his smaller form. Weak point. Identified, he boasted before suddenly morphing into his full reindeer form. Belle leapt into the air only for Chopper's legs to swell before he swung with a kick to her ribs that made her gasp for air. What the hell? How do you know I had a bruise from my last mission? She panicked before Chopper's forehooves now doubled in size before spiking her back to the ground like a red-colored volleyball. As Belle abandoned her cracked sunglasses, she squinted through the snow to see Luffy's foot about to come down on her head. The agent threw herself backwards to safety only to find herself teetering on the edge of the mountain. Hey, not bad. No wonder they say no one under captain should go after you, she chuckled, though I gotta wonder, why snatch up Cinderella? Because she was miserable with Wapol. Are you really going to force a woman into a terrible marriage with a bastard like him? Luffy scowled, the rest of his crew just as angry. Look, I was given very simple orders. Capture you and your crew, ship the royals back to their homes and everyone else to the nearest cell. If I start questioning every little thing, then nothing gets done. So that means she deserves to suffer, Chopper yelled. If someone is hanging on the edge of a cliff, would you not save them just because of your damn orders? Kid, I'm not heartless. If she wants a divorce, then the world government has rules for that. 1. They're not married yet, so she's technically free to do whatever she wants, Moody pointed out. And 2. Funny how few messy couples you hear about in the papers. Probably because they don't want to look anything less than perfect. TCH, you may have a point, but there's one thing you ought to remember. Belle smirked as her entire body suddenly unraveled until only a single line of silk was left and zipped away. Everyone turned to see the agent now standing in the front door to the castle, with Cinderella bundled up like a mummy in her left arm. Her right hand formed a knife aimed at the future queen's throat. I'm a Cipher Pol. I spar with vice admirals for fun. Silk crochet. Marionette, she boasted, if that were really me, then you might have gotten lucky. Kudos to the reindeer for finding out where my one injury was. Chopper grumbled. He reached under his hat and pulled out another golden ball, one he had eaten just before the fight started. According to him, they altered his unique zone-enhanced physiology to let him freely shift between multiple forms that could enhance his perception or boost his attack or defense. Now, let me try this again, she said smoothly. You can either come with me peacefully or Wapol's bride-to-be is going to pay for it. The fuck? So we're shitty for getting her out of a bad marriage, but you're gonna shank her? Desire exploded. Who's the psycho now, you cunt? Nothing bad will happen as long as you come quietly. My associates ought to be hauling your friends in right about now. So why don't you all save me the trouble of AAAAH? Cinderella's bindings suddenly became undone as Belle stumbled, turning around to reveal several scalpels embedded in her back. Ah, don't be such a pansy, Dr. Correia yelled from the corridor behind her. I made sure to avoid any vitals. You do realize you're interfering with world government business, right? I have every authorization to use lethal force against anyone assisting criminals like this. All that matters to me is you rummaged through my home, disturbed my patient, and now you're saying yo piece of shit that ruined this island. Another scalpel flew right past Belle's head, inches away from embedding in her skull to land right in front of Chopper, his eyes shining in relief. And, worst of all, you attacked my son. Do that again, and I will make you beg for death. Doctorine, well, if that's what you want, then I'll. Belle had to stop as she caught a fist before it could slam into her teeth. Cinderella snarled at the agent as she ripped one of the scalpels free and tried to jam it in the agent's eye. Listen to me, you stooge. I've spent the better part of the last several weeks debating whether or not to drown myself being near that fat fuck 24/7. And that man gave me the first reason to live since that Blackbeard took my entire family away. The family who, for the record, was the only reason I wanted anything to do with Wapol, since being his bride was the only way to get them all medical care. Now do everyone a favor and fuck off. Belle grabbed her by the wrist, but the scalpel simply fell into Cinderella's other hand and was shoved straight into the agent's gut. Though the blade was tiny, it made her flinch long enough for Cinderella to back away. Oh, and one more thing, Dr. Correia noted, that patient of mine, I just gave her permission to get out of bed. A roar shot through the entire castle as Reiju, in full lion form, bounded past the good doctor and ran Belle over, trampling her underfoot before turning to face her with a snarl. Pink ringlets of hair draped around her muzzle, fangs bared in rage. Step away from my captain, now. Oh, you must be Pride Queen, Reiju. I suppose I'll take care of you first. Belle formed her silken scythe once again and charged in, the lioness roaring as she responded in kind. To the agent's credit, she held strong as Reiju slammed her paws against her weapon. The agent was about to counter only for something to slam into her thigh and send her tumbling. She turned to see Luffy's leg retract from a gum-gum stamp before running in to attack again. Now Belle had to push her observation haki to keep up with the two-pronged assault between Reiju's pouncing and Luffy's elastic blows. She considered retreating into the castle only to find Correia, Chopper, and the rest of Luffy's girls forming a wall between her and potential cover. And between them, and all the energy Belle has spent getting up the mountain and fighting on and off for a while, the agent was starting to feel sluggish. She needed to end this now so that the backup could swoop in and capture the Straw Hats. Alright, I'll admit it, you're both pretty good. I didn't want to have to do this since I wanted to bring you in alive, but y'all leave me no choice. Silk Regalia, Atalanta. The pirates watched as Belle's entire form exploded into strands of silk before slowly reshaping itself into something much larger. Strand by strand, Belle seemed to weave herself an entirely new body that stood over 9 feet tall and was layered in so much extra muscle that it must have tripled her weight. Even her clothes had changed to look like ragged pelts stretched across vast biceps, pecs and abs. All of it is the same creamy beige as her other fabrications. Luffy and Reiju both looked up at Belle's face, the only unchanged part of her, now sitting on top of this titanic body. Her glasses had flown off, revealing a set of deep black eyes glaring down at them, her red hair and lips the only color. The last time I had to use this, it was to quell a military junta in the South Blue, 400 armed nutjobs in the jungle plotting to slit the ruling family's throat. I only brought back 5 for questioning. Luffy and Reiju shared one glance before nodding. You're gonna have to try a lot harder to scare us. I've seen more frightening things in my pantry. Well then, before the inevitable happens, tell me one thing. Monkey D. Luffy, what do you hope to achieve by doing all this? The captain just smiled as he stared the government agent in the eye and declared, I'm gonna be king of the pirates. Belle just nodded, the faintest hint of respect on her face. HMPH, that's not a light claim. You're gonna have the whole world government on your ass talking like that. The massive construct lowered into a crouch, a massive spear forming around its hands. It seems Belle had complete control over her new body, especially as she charged ahead with her lance poised to gut Reiju. The lion leapt into the air only to find the polearm extended dozens of feet in seconds. It was only thanks to Moonwalk that Reiju could move aside before she was skewered. Luffy tried to assist with a gum whip, but Belle planted her spear and applied enough armament haki that her weapon turned black and Luffy had to recoil his foot and wince from the impact. Reiju landed and shifted back to her half-lion form before redoubling her efforts, Luffy and her trying a pincer attack. Belle spun her halberd like a rotor blade, creating a gust of wind so fast that it made Reiju stop and have to plant her feet lest she be blown away. Luffy managed to land a gum pistol to her back, but his fist barely dented the highly compacted silk. You're gonna have to try harder than that. Belle suddenly lunged at him, the blunt end of her weapon slamming into his stomach and nearly making Luffy double over. But when she tried to pull back, she found her spear was stuck. Luffy's fingers dug into the fabric, glimmering with armament haki. And you're going to pay if you keep me from my dream. With a mighty hoist, Luffy lifted Belle's entire silk-enhanced body off its feet and slammed the agent on her head. Belle's entire form shuddered as a pained groan escaped her clenched teeth before her entire construct disappeared from the shock. Well, guess those militia creeps didn't try that. Belle chuckled before getting up. If I didn't have iron body, I might be down for the count. Peru. Belle's eyebrows shot up as she answered her portable transponder snail, listening intently before grinning at Luffy. Well, it's your lucky day, your majesty. Turns out you were even more right about Wapol being a scumbucket than I thought. I've now got other business to take care of, so you're off the hook for now. And with a final flirty wink, the woman in red ran over the cable car line and zip-lined back down the mountain to rendezvous with her squad, leaving the Straw Hat Pirates a mix of confused, relieved and wondering how the others were doing. Dr. Kureha? Reiju asked. I know there's still the matter of payment, but… Go on, let's follow after them. I'm dying to see that fat bastard get his comeuppance. I'll bring the bill up with this Nami girl afterwards. Chopper, let's go. The reindeer, already starry-eyed from seeing Luffy suplex Belle, ran ahead to the cable car as the rest of the Straw Hats piled in with Luffy pedaling them all down at max speed. In sharp comparison to the other fights raging across Drum Island, Wapol and his cronies were hopelessly outmatched. Despite outnumbering the Namis part of the Straw Hats and Dalton by dozens, they were dispatched with ease. The only minor issue was when Wapol used his munch fruit to merge Chess and Kuromarimo into a freaky fusion called Chess Marimo, the strongest warrior of Drum Kingdom. He fared the best out of everyone, lasting a full minute. Unfortunately, a hairy boxer and an archer fused together do not mean much when Custard can summon exploding cherries to stop him cold. Nijiko can restrain his limbs with evergreen tree roots and is free to get zapped by Nami, body slammed by Clarice and nearly gored by Dalton. The only one left standing at this point was Wapol, his fists balled in indignant fury. Get up, you bunch of slackers. Is this how you fight for your king? Oh, shut up, Nami yelled. Why don't you try fighting us if you're that damn important? Because that is beneath my status as a royal. Everyone knows that we're not meant to dirty our hands when it comes to issues. Hidden Amonans cheering for the Straw Hats and booing Wapol now that his guards were no longer threatening them. Vivi grit her teeth hard enough to make sparks. It took everything she had to not slap that arrogant smirk off his face the longer he went attacking and belittling the crew that was trying so hard to get her home. Right before she could potentially do that, further salvation came as Makino's group ran in from the east, followed shortly by Kuina's group from the west. The already bedraggled guards now refused to even flinch as the Straw Hats' numbers tripled. Well, looks like you all had an easier time than we did. Makita giggled. Want me to flatten this creep into a pancake? Tempting, but no, Ban said, her guns trained on him. I prefer we just silence his fat gob with a bullet between his eyes. Wait a minute, aren't you from Frost Kingdom? Wapol blinked. What are you doing with these no-good pirates? Pot, meet kettle, a voice said from behind the crowd. Everyone turned to see Belle strutting back, albeit with a slight stumble in a few of her steps like she had taken a bad blow to the head. On her right was Shiro, also walking like something wasn't quite right between his legs. Wick, on her left, looked mostly fine other than the even more determined scowl on his face. "What are you three doing?" Wapol yelled. "You were supposed to eliminate the Straw Hats and rescue my fiancé." "Well, sir, it appears we have conflicting interests. Tell me, what have you been doing since you left Drum Kingdom weeks ago?" The king bit his tongue, refusing to answer. The second she turned her eyes to the bedraggled servants now lying in the snow, the jig was up. They all confessed they were acting as a pirate crew up until today, flying under a Jolly Roger and looting ships primarily to feed their gluttonous Captain, Wapol. "Well now, that means you are now in violation of international statute against piracy, signed into law over 200 years ago due to an epidemic of corrupt royals running their own pirate operations as a means of performing covert warfare, illegal smuggling, or just generally being greedy pricks, states that any royal who willfully engages in acts of piracy forfeits his or her royal title and that means." Wapol gasped as Shiro clamped a set of sea-stone cuffs over his tubby wrists, making him lose the ability to even keep himself upright. The people of Drum and the Straw Hats, including Luffy's group that was not far behind Bell, watched in delight as he and all his cronies were rounded up and shackled. "Wapol, you are hereby under arrest for your crimes as captain of the Tin Tyrant Pirates. You are stripped of all royal titles, privileges, funds and protection granted by the world government. You will be shipped directly to Eni's lobby for a trial after a more thorough investigation into your piratical activities. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court." "You can't do that to me. I'm the one WHO called you here. You work for me, bitch, all." Before he could protest anymore, a burly, furry fist drove him into gut and nearly made him vomit up whatever his last meal was. A right hook then smashed into his tin-plated teeth, buckling the armor as he fell fully onto the ground. "That was for Dr. Hiruluk. Bastard, I've been wanting to do that for years." "Ahajajajajajajajajajaj," Chopper shouted to the heavens, too filled with satisfaction to notice that he had just transformed from a normal reindeer into his monster form. He then looked around in panic only to be met by a wave of cheers from the people of Drum, the Straw Hats and Kureha rushing up to hug him in pride. Belle simply nodded as she dragged Wapol away, even as he screamed that the kingdom would fall apart without a leader. Since there is no current heir apparent to the Drum Kingdom line, be it any siblings, children, or other regents, the bloodline is considered dead. Furthermore, without any other bloodlines, the exact means of government may be decided by the island's next highest acting governmental figure, Dalton proudly stated, having long since investigated that issue since Wapol's desertion. Wait, the deposed king squealed, now on his last legs as the marine vessel that was supposed to bring reinforcements for Bell was now here to drag him away. "Cinderella, my queen, please, you have to take over, you have to rule Drum in my place." The finely dressed woman, however, had the most vindictive, shit-eating smile imaginable as she looked back at him. "Oh, can I? Weren't you the one who insisted that we can't just elope at sea like common bastards? That we need to have a huge, traditional drum wedding ceremony that takes weeks to prepare? And has to be done on the soil of your glorious ancestors? That's why you insisted we come back to Drum so fast, right?" Wheel, guess what? We didn't have the ceremony, just like you wanted. And that means I'm not queen of anything. So, no, I cannot be a ruler of this kingdom. But, as thanks for being such good company to me, let me give you a little parting gift." She then marched up to Luffy, grabbed the captain by his collar, and locked him into a deep, passionate kiss right in front of her now ex-fiancé. Luffy silently shrugging and returning the favor. The people hollered and laughed at Wapol's mortified face before Cinderella came up for air 10 seconds later. "Jerk off to that in your cell, you flabby waste of space. I'm gonna get fucked by a real man, who's gonna be king of the pirates while you rot all alone. Enjoy being someone's personal body pillow, loser." Wapol's final words before he was gagged were swearing eternal vengeance on Luffy, demanding to see the 5 Elder Stars. All the typical ramblings of a spoiled rotten brat finally not getting his way for once. He was soon drowned out by the celebrating people of the soon-to-be-renamed Drum Kingdom, tossing Luffy and Chopper on their shoulders while the rest of his crew were invited to dance, eat and be praised for their brave efforts. It took a while for the crew to even notice Reiju was on her feet once again, which only prompted even more partying. The day after, once Reiju was forced back into bed under Kureha's care to finish her treatment, the Straw Hat Pirates were allowed to set sail. After much negotiating between the witch doctor and Nami, they had settled for Luffy bashing open the castle's armory so she have a little something set up. In the meantime, the Going Merry and Mini Melody had been stocked with supplies and Reiju's supplements made by Chopper. The reindeer admitted he wanted to be a pirate, but he also had a responsibility he had to take care of for now. With the 20 MDs allowed to work on other patients, Kureha planned to transform the castle into a medical school to train the MDs and any new medicine men up to her standard. And so, with a very eager Cinderella joining them, The Straw Hats set off from the newly named Sakura Kingdom. But as they were leaving, with Chopper waving them off at the port, Kureha gave the signal. All of the cannons she had wheeled out from armory suddenly exploded, drawing the eyes of the entire island. They watched in amazement as the falling snow was suddenly splashed with pink, painting them to look like cherry blossoms. The Straw Hats had heard the story from Kureha during the night's festivities, of how the only other doctor besides her under Wapol's reign was an eccentric quack looking to cure all diseases. That man, Dr. Hiralik, took a young Chopper in, gave him his name and hat, and first inspired him to be a doctor. He only met his demise when Wapol lied to him that he had a sick patient in his castle, but the quack was met with an entire army to end him. He instead took one final concoction that ended him before a poisonous mushroom kid, wishing Chopper goodbye as he declared he lived a marvelous life. Now as the pirates sailed away, they could clearly hear Chopper sobbing in relief at seeing his inspiration's other dream come true. The Straw Hats raised a glass in Hans and hoped that one day, the disease known as emu would be wiped away as well.